guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to the Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be answering all the questions you guys asked me on my 1,000 subscriber Q&A video. So I passed 1,000 subscribers at the beginning of January, and to celebrate that I wanted to do a Q&A so you guys could ask me any questions and I would answer them, so bookish or non-bookish, it didn't really matter. So I've got quite a few questions to answer, so let's get started. The first question is from Katie at Girl About Library, and she asked, my question is, did you go to university, what did you study, and do you use that degree in your occupation? So I did go to university. I went to the University of Greenwich to do my degree, and I did a BA in English literature. So it was a 3-year degree, and I got my degree at the end of the 3. I don't really know where I was going with that. So I got my degree in English literature. It was a really good course because I got to study a range of different periods and different kinds of texts, both modern and a bit more classic. And I did a couple of really exciting units. So I did some history courses, and I did a history course that was about family and local history, and I got to do a project about somewhere that was local to me, and that was really interesting to do all the research and write that up. And then I took this other course that was about Walt Disney, and it was all about the history of the Disney franchise and things like that, and it was just fascinating to learn about. So I did, they were kind of more history courses more than literature, but I did some really cool things during my degree. I do use it in my occupation. So for those of you that know, I'm an English teacher at a secondary school, so that's obviously how my degree is linked to my job. So I teach both GCSE level, which is up until the age of 16, and then A level, which is up until the age of 18. And we study a few more advanced texts at A level, obviously, and then but still some classics and things like that at GCSE. So I get to delve into some of my degree, and obviously it's helped me get to where I am today. Lucy from Book Hacks asks, I'd love to know whether the kids you teach watch your channel and what they think. The answer to that, hopefully, I think is no, they don't watch it. I started a YouTube channel a couple of years ago that was more sort of a lifestyle channel, and they found out about that, and it got to a point where it was a bit untenable. So, and the channel wasn't doing particularly great at the time anyway, so I decided to close it. But I really missed filming and things like that, and I'd got more into the book scene again, and I was watching BookTube and things like that, and so I decided to start the BookTube channel, obviously. As far as I'm aware, they don't know about it, but to be honest, if they did find out, it wouldn't bother me that much looking back on it now. I think my response would be, well, if you watch, you'll learn something, basically. To be honest, I don't think they'd really be that interested in what I talk about on here. So yeah, I don't really talk about it at work with colleagues or anything like that, so not many people outside of my immediate family know that I actually make videos on YouTube. So yeah, like I said, if they do find out, it's not going to bother me too much, but I don't think they'll be interested anyway, to be honest. Krista from Books and Jams asks, what book do you wish you could read again for the first time besides Harry Potter? There's probably quite a few, actually. Those real favourites that I look back on and kind of remember the moment where I was so engaged in the story and so attached to the characters and things like that. I think The Book Thief is definitely one of those. That's definitely a book that I'd like to reread, actually, just because I've read it quite a few years ago now, so some of the details are a little bit hazy, but I absolutely love the way that book was told, and it was just such an emotional roller coaster, and that's definitely a book that I wish I could go back and read for the first time. And then sort of some of my other favourites, so for example something that I read really recently that I love, which was Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. That was just such a clever book and such a lovely story that I just, yeah, I just feel like wouldn't it be great to just experience those emotions all over again, but afresh, so that you're discovering it. Yeah, so I've got some questions from Never Quite Dreaming, I think it is. So she asked, first of all, do you have a favourite genre? I don't think I do, to be honest. We read a wide variety of different genres. I think I would say that I really like thrillers, and maybe that's one of my favourite genres. But there's nothing that's kind of really standing out to me as, oh, I read that all the time and I really, really love that. Another favourite, I suppose, is historical fiction, although I feel like I've read less of that over the last couple of years. I feel like I've read quite a lot of literary fiction. I do like literary fiction. So yeah, I probably have like a few genres that are my favourites, but I wouldn't say that there's a favourite genre overall. I just, yeah, like dipping in and out of lots of different things, really. She also asked, have you always been an avid reader? Pretty much, yes. I remember I've said this on my videos before, but I have these really vivid memories of reading once my mum had told me to go to bed and turn the light out, with a torch under the covers, and then when I heard her coming up the stairs I would like quickly turn off the torch and pretend to be asleep. I don't particularly think she would have told me off that much if she knew I was reading, but yeah, just because I was really involved in whatever book I was reading and I just couldn't put it down. And I suppose I have memories of that when I want to say sort of like 7 or 8, something kind of along those lines. And then I've kind of always been a reader growing up. And then obviously I went to university to do my degree, and I've kind of got, I think I felt quite bogged down in a lot of classics during my degree, and I haven't come back to those until very, very recently and started enjoying those again. But I've always had a book on the go. And when I got into my early 20s, I remember my bedroom just being filled with books, to the point where I had like a cupboard in my room and it was filled up with books, and then I'd filled that completely, and then I had this desk in my room, and the desk at one point was absolutely piled up with books. It was just ridiculous. And when I moved out into my first house, I remember the one thing that took up the most room in boxes that I'd packed was books. There was just so many of them, and I've just loved collecting books ever since then, really. I love the idea of having a collection of books. I remember going round a colleague of mine's house one day. I think we were going to some sort of a baby shower or something like that, and she was hosting it. And she had this room at the front of her house, which I think was her living room. And just around the outside, a bit like in here I suppose, there were just shelves and shelves of books. And I just remember walking into that room and just thinking how comfortable it looked and how homely and just how lovely it was to be surrounded by so many good books. And I always wanted that for myself, so yeah, hence why I've got such a big collection now. Sue Ward asked, what made you want to become a booktuber? So I'd been watching BookTube for at least 1.5 years before I decided to start my channel, and I was just absolutely obsessed with it. I loved watching it. I think just because it was such a niche area, and within my own life I'm obviously surrounded by colleagues who read a little bit, but not as much as you might expect for teachers. Actually, some of them read quite a lot and others don't, so I can talk to them at work. And then obviously my husband I talk to, he's a very, very avid reader, so it's great talking to him about books as well. But I just discovered this whole community where people were as obsessed with books as I was. And just listening to their recommendations, because I think that's something that I struggled with earlier in life. I would kind of pick up things just because I thought they looked good, and I wouldn't get around to reading them, or they wouldn't be that great. And I kind of feel like I'm having a really good reading sort of life at the moment, just because I'm surrounded by so many good recommendations. And like I said, I'd had this channel before and really missed filming, and because I was so obsessed with BookTube, I remember my husband having a conversation with me and saying, like, why don't you just do it? Like, you have things to say, why don't you just give it a go? So I did, and I absolutely love being a part of this community. I love making videos, I love chatting with you guys in the comments. I love getting like recommendations still, and just putting out their different opinions, just because I feel like younger me would really appreciate that as well. Plus, you know, not just younger me, but you know what I mean, like me 10, 12, 15 years ago would have really appreciated knowing that so many people were out there with so many good recommendations, but also that had the same interests as me as well. I think it's, you know, that kind of person that you can relate to, really. And then Jo Smith asked me a few questions. So she says, what countries or continents do you most like to read about, and what period in history? From a countries and continents point of view, I think I used to be quite obsessed with reading books set in Japan and China and that kind of part of Asia, just because of it was just so exotic and so different, and finding out about the culture and the particular lifestyle and the history of those kind of places was really, really fascinating. I've sort of fallen out of reading those. That was maybe about 10 years ago or something like that, but recently I've sort of become interested in it again. I saw April from Getting Hygge With It. She hauled Snowflower and the Secret Fan recently, and I've got that on my shelf, and I read it around sort of that period, and I remember absolutely loving it and just being totally fascinated with the things that were going on in that particular in that part of the world at that particular time. I also am absolutely obsessed with Australia, just from a couple of different points of view. I've been there twice because I have family over there. So when I was about 13, I went with my sister and my granddad to Australia, and my family come from Perth, and we spent sort of a month over there. It was just absolutely fantastic. And then when I was 21, so when I just finished my degree and before I went to do my teacher training, I went with my sister for 3 months over to Australia. So we spent a little bit of time with family, and then we flew over to Sydney and got on a Greyhound bus and sort of made our way from Sydney all the way up to Cairns, and it was just incredible, absolutely incredible. I'm just fascinated by the fact that it's such a laid back way of life for a start, and just things are just so beautiful over there. We did this great trip where we sailed around the Whitsunday Islands, and I got quite seasick, but apart from that, the scenery was absolutely incredible, and just visiting different places that you just wouldn't get to visit. And yeah, it was just being on the other side of the world was fascinating. So reading about that as well really, really interests me. I remember reading when I got back from that trip, I read Bill Bryson's, I think it's called Australia, but I'm not sure. It's like his sort of travel memoir about Australia, and he travelled around a lot of the same places that me and my sister had, and it was just so nostalgic reading over and reading about those places again. It just made me want to go back, and I'd love to go back again. So reading about that would just takes me back, and yeah, I'm absolutely fascinated by it, really. And then she also asked about period in history. I don't think I have a particular preference, to be honest. I've read quite a lot of World War I and II fiction, which I quite enjoy. I quite like some of the classics that I've read in terms of like 19th century things and things like that. But I wouldn't say like I have a particular preference. Perhaps that's because I haven't, well, I feel like I haven't read an awful lot of historical fiction. Like, I don't think I've got the breadth which makes me think I really like that period, because I've read a load of books in there, and that's kind of what I prefer. Yeah, so I don't really have a preference. She also asked, do you keep all the books you read, or do you give some away? I do a little bit of both, and I've sort of made up my mind a little bit more over the last couple of years about what I do with those, because I used to keep everything that I'd read, and then every now and again I'd have a cull where, because I run out of room basically, so yeah, I'd just have a cull and take some to the charity shop and things like that. Now I'm a bit more selective about what I keep on my shelves, just because I know that eventually I will run out of room, and I don't ever want to get rid of favourites basically, and I want to always have space to buy new books, because I know that I'm always going to do that. I'm always going to be somebody who buys new books. And there's nothing that's going to stop that, basically. So yeah, I've tried to keep books that I've at least given a 3-star rating to, but now I'm kind of thinking more along the lines of, should I be giving them 4 and 5-star ratings? But I do think carefully about that. And if I'm not going to keep a book for any reason, then I will generally take them to the local charity shop, just donate them in that sort of sense. Sometimes I take them to school and donate them to the library at school, that sort of thing. She also asked, how do you instill a love of reading in your students? Do I always is the question to that. I try to, obviously. Just by talking to them with passion about books. So trying to introduce them to a range of different things. I think some students have this kind of block in their heads in terms of they've picked up a few books and they've not really enjoyed them that much, so that means that reading's not for them at all. And I tried to kind of instill in them this kind of idea that you've just not found the book that you like yet. So you need to keep looking, basically, and sort of recommend some different things and encourage them to try different genres and some more popular things that I know they'll enjoy and things like that. We recently, I nicked this idea from my husband, put together a list of 50 books that you should read before you leave the school that I work for, and got teachers to kind of recommend things that they'd loved both as a kid and sort of now. So it's a mixture of middle grade and YA and adult fiction. And so I sort of refer them to that list as well, in terms of, you know, have you tried something like this? But also we read books like together, like class readers, so whenever we're doing that sort of thing, I've really tried to beef up the discussion and the commentary of it, and looking at the wider themes and trying to relate it to their own lives and trying to kind of create the passion in that sort of sense. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of instill a love of reading in every student, and yeah, even some students, but we try. She also asked, who are your favourite booktubers? It varies actually from one day to the next. Sometimes I'll kind of get really obsessed with watching one particular booktuber's videos, and then other times I won't be that bothered about watching them. It kind of depends on what mood I'm in. Like, for example, at the moment I'm in a real mood to just watch TBRs for some reason. So I've been kind of like binge watching those, because obviously it's the beginning of February and people have kind of put up their TBRs for February. I recently put up a video where I did some booktuber shout outs, so I'll link that for you. A lot of those are ones that I watch regularly, like Karen from Rather Be Reading. I love Lisa from Books and Smiles. She and I get on so well and have a very, very similar taste in books, but she also reads a lot of things that I haven't read or don't tend to read, but then she recommends them and they sound fantastic, so I put them on my wish list, or I'll buy a copy on my Kindle, whatever. I really, really love watching Krista from Books and Jam. She's another one of my favourite booktubers. She just, yeah, again, she and I have very, very similar taste in reading, and will tend to say very, very similar things about books that we've read, tend to have kind of like the same opinions, which is always funny. And I've body read stuff with her in the past as well. One of the bigger booktubers that's a favourite of mine is Caitlin from Kitty G. She just passed 10,000 subscribers and she absolutely deserves it. She reads, it's a bit weird because she reads a lot of science fiction and fantasy, and I'm not a big fan of those genres. Like, I don't hate them or anything, but I just don't read a lot from them. But I started watching her channel just because I love listening to her talk about books, and also I watch her a lot for recommendations for my husband. So because she reads a lot of that, my husband loves those genres as well. I'm always adding things to my wish list for him. But she does read other stuff as well, and I actually met her, I bumped into her in London at a Robin Hobb signing, and met her, which was really, really lovely. So she's one of the bigger ones that I follow a lot, and every time she posts a video I just have to watch it. I'll also link for you my Booktuber Recommends project. The 12 booktubers that are in that video are also, all of the ones on that list I watch really, really regularly and absolutely love. So I'll link that video for you too, so you can go and check those out too. And she also asked, what do you and Stefan like to do in your free time? Read. but that's a bit boring, isn't it, because that's why you guys are here. What else do we like to do? We like to go to the cinema, we like to go out to dinner, we love going on holiday, love travelling together in our free time. We've kind of talked about doing sort of more weekends away, sort of go on a Friday evening and come back on a Sunday. Yeah, love going on holiday. What else do we like doing? A bit of shopping. Well, I do anyway, I'm not sure about him. We also quite like cooking together and baking. In fact, he asked me, I think it was a week ago now, when are you going to bake me another set of brownies, because he's absolutely obsessed with brownies. So yeah, and we've done quite a bit of that together as well. So Stefan's a massive sports fan, so he watches a lot of football, rugby, cricket in the summer, NFL, darts, all of that kind of stuff. So he likes watching that, and I don't mind it. I don't hate it or anything like that. I don't mind watching that sort of thing, but I sort of do my own thing while he's watching a bit of sport. He's actually in the other room at the moment playing Fortnite on his PS4, so he does a bit of that in his spare time too. Yeah, so right, I think I'm gonna wrap the video up here. So thanks to everybody who asked questions. It was lovely sitting here chatting to you about lots of different things, both bookish and non-bookish. If you still have a question that you want to ask me, then leave it in the comments below and I'll answer it there. Yeah, and once again, thanks very much for yeah, for 1,000 subscribers. I've recently actually passed 1,200, and yeah, I've done that in less than a month, which is just, it blows my mind. It really does. I just cannot appreciate you guys anymore. I really do. Yeah, and I'm blown away by the support, so thank you very much. Yeah, and that's it. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.